Hello, Catherine Foley is my name. Last reading, today live at 5. I'm going to read from my book Beyond the Breakwater, and today's chapter is called Romance in the Air, chapter 69. It was dark and cold outside. Ice covered the roads and the sky was heavy with snow. Very few were out that night. There were just 3 men drinking at the counter in the Shanachie Bar, a place where I had worked when I was 19. The 3 bachelors were simply having a quiet drink in the dead of winter. RoseAnn and I chose a table by the window. I ordered our drinks and we sat in near the bar. Soon we were part of the company and they were talking to us. One of them, a dark-eyed, thin man, sketched us a story of unrequited love. It was his own story, but he brushed it off lightly, as if broken hearts were meant to be lived with and endured. He'd lost in love, he said. Thoughts of romance trembled on the air. I looked at this gaunt, lonely man, and I recalled a couple I used to serve in the pub years earlier. The 2 of them came in at 9 o'clock every week. Their whispered imprecations and concerned entreaties at the door always created a certain awed expectancy. Once they pushed through that heavy, squeaking door, heads would begin to turn to view their progress. They were big people who moved slowly, cumbersomely even. Their bodies seemed to sway elegantly from side to side as they came down along the narrow bar, step by careful step. They seemed to mimic the great milking beasts of the farm where they spent their lives. Arriving at the counter, they would stand and wait for me to serve them. There was a definite aura of glee about the pair of them. Although well into their middle years, they were newly wed. Her face would light up at the sight of me, and she'd bend her head slightly to one side and smile with pleasure when I went to take their order. He would stand slightly behind her in the bar's darkened passageway. He'd come close if she looked to him to furnish an answer. Even I, in my blinkered state of youthful indifference, could see he was a handsome man, with a fine mouth, smiling eyes, and a manly bearing. He always wore a suit and a dark trilby with a short trim. They looked well together. Her voice, deep and velvet-like, would caress me. "Hello, Catherine, how are you?" I remember her warmth and friendliness, and it was clear she had taken pains to dress up for the occasion, with a dab of rouge reddening her cheeks and a garish line of lipstick along her mouth. Usually she sported a military-style suit, and she sometimes wore a hat, its netting pulled forward jauntily over her forehead. A paste brooch often decorated her lapel. With all the wisdom of my 19 years, I used to view this woman and her soft-spoken husband in a slightly pitying way. I thought her innocent and simple. But I kept these preconceptions to myself. So when she put her handbag on the counter, her eyes twinkling at me, full of the fun and excitement of being out together for a drink, I didn't fully appreciate how happy she was in her newly married bliss, or how beautiful and lovely she was. She'd give me the order then, a pint of Guinness and a vodka and slimline tonic, and she'd chat to me while I got the drinks. She leaned in close one night to tell me about their romance. I don't think I believed her. Secretly, I dismissed her story, thinking she was away with the fairies. But she told me how they'd lived on neighbouring farms until she wrote him a letter one day suggesting he call up to the house so they could talk about getting married. She asked a mutual neighbour to deliver the letter. That's how she proposed to the shy farmer, and he accepted. "I asked him to marry me," she said, watching my reaction. "I did," she said, seeing my disbelief, her great roomy eyes reflecting the light that bounced off all the bottles ranged along the shelves. She wanted me to know how well it had all worked out. I asked the men at the counter if they remembered this couple. They nodded. "Ah, they're both gone now," they said. The dark-eyed, thin man remained still, saying nothing at all. "Do you know she proposed to him?" one of them asked me. "Oh, she wrote to him," the man continued. She gave the letter to a neighbour who lived between the two of them, and she wrote asking him to call down to her so they could discuss marriage. We all savoured the wonder of it. "And do you know," said the man at the counter, "the man who delivered the letter was a bachelor too, and he couldn't understand why she hadn't asked him." There was a pause then. The dark-eyed, thin man gave a cough before he spoke. "That was me. 'Twas I brought it down to him," he said, quiet and shy with the admission. "That's right, 'twas me," he said, nodding. "And she had no eyes for me at all." After a moment of silence, he laughed quietly. It seemed the passage of time had dulled the embarrassment he'd felt, and he was able to look back at himself to a time when he had been younger, foolish and full of hope. The rest of us sipped our drinks quietly, sensing his regret. We savoured the disclosure, knowing that he'd shared a secret with us. Love was in the air that night, as I recalled the couple who used to put on their finery to come to the pub for a drink, where they would twinkle in the gloaming, exuding happiness. And I'm going to read one more poem then as a tribute to RoseAnn, my sister, who has been camera woman for all of these 66 days of filming. And we started on the 16th of March. And this is the 10th week, so we wanted to maybe hopefully help you all go through COVID-19 and make it a little bit easier. And thank you all for all the lovely wishes and comments. They've made it all the easier. So and it was a way of celebrating the book too, which came out 2 years ago, and it won the Waterford News and Star Green Room Award for Best New Book in 2018 when it came out. So this is for RoseAnn, my camera woman, whose idea it was to do this. And thank you all. And I'll leave you then in the safe hands of Andrew Doherty down in Russianside, Waterford's Tides and Tales Facebook, and he'll carry on with the great work he's doing, his blogs and vlogs. So this is Fairies on Woodstown Strand. We walked along Woodstown Strand. It was twilight when fairies flit from briar to bud. Even as the sun went down and the evening grew chill, we slipped through a veil and remembered how we played as children. We heard the tide coming in, and our feet going over tiny crunching shells sounded like voices from 40 years before, rolling in off the waves. And we became light like crystal and easy in the breeze, amazed at all our eyes could see in the gloaming. So that's it. That's the final reading. Thank you for listening. RoseAnn, just come in to wave for a minute. So
Jacqueline, thank you all for watching and supporting us. We're off to a rap party now, so all the best. Bye.
Oh, and just one more thing. I left out some of the more personal, more somber chapters towards the end because I thought I'd focus on the upbeat stories that you might find funny and amusing. So there are others in the book, but anyway, I gave you the bulk of them. So thanks. Goodbye.